Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hindu Explainer series. I am Kushagra Goel and warm greetings from Law Prep Tutorial. We know that as we are getting closer, we are noting down the suggestions that you've been putting in for the revision series videos. So don't worry, we will be covering those that we have already covered. For example, China disengagement plan, something that I have discussed in a lot of detail already, but don't worry, we'll cover those things. Similarly, your suggestion regarding climate change is also noted. We'll talk about that also. On that note, the doubts from yesterday. So one doubt that students had was, what is the collegium system of the Supreme Court? Now this is in light of how in the past 2 years of Justice Bobde's appointment as the Chief Justice of India, he has not been able to make any appointments to the Supreme Court, which is the longest tenure of a CJI without any appointment. Now, in that light, the Collegium is a system that makes appointments to those of the Supreme Court judges, that who will be appointed to the Supreme Court roster. So that constitutes the CJI along with the 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. So that is the forum of the Collegium. They suggest names, they recommend the names to the government. The government has an option to either approve them and send it to the president, who will then confirm their appointment, or the government sends back citing its reservations. The Collegium then can either send other list of suggestions or confirm the same list. Now, if they do that, the government has no option but to confirm the appointment, and the president has to appoint them. So that is the Collegium system in a nutshell. Then moving on, another doubt was regarding the cyber attack on the Nantes facility of Iran, that what can countries do once such an attack takes place. So one simple thing, you find out who did it. Now let's say, for example, in India and the Italy fishing marine case, right? So we took action against the 2 marines. We filed case against them, which was a violation of our right. Similarly, either you declare it as an act of war, you go to war with that country, or you find out individual liability of who carried out the attack, and then you sue them or take appropriate action against those individuals. Then moving on, another doubt that students had was about negative yield bonds. What are negative yield bonds? So by name itself, you can understand negative yield. A bond is, for example, you say, let's say, when you put in a saving certificate or you put in money in the bank. Let's say you get 3%, 4% interest annually. So if you have put in 100 rupees, you get 4 rupees as interest rate annually on it. Similarly, bonds are also have a fixed yield rate. That is, what will be the return from a bond. Negative yield bonds are those bonds that actually give you less money than what you got from purchasing a bond, okay? But the benefit of such bonds is from cross trading, that is, investors from another country may buy it. So when, for example, you're earning in Indian rupees and you buy a US dollar bond, you may still be able to get some return because of exchange currency fluctuations, or you get security when, for example, you put in money in stock market. There is no guarantee that you will get the money even to the level that you have put in. The stock value may nosedive, but in a negative yield bond, you are guaranteed of some return as per the percentage that is provided in your bond. Then moving on, another doubt that students had was about the remdesivir drug. Now the ban on remdesivir is not about purchase of it. It is the export of the drug that has been banned. Why is it being banned? Because India is facing a shortage of the drug in India. It is a prescribed drug for treatment for COVID-19 patients. It helps in stopping the duplication of the enzyme that multiplies COVID-19 virus in our blood. So it is for that, and therefore the export of the drug has been banned. On that note, we'll begin with today's newspaper analysis. On the left hand side, Sensex and Rupee are also slipping in light of the rising COVID-19 wave, the second wave that India is witnessing, as COVID restrictions are put in place, 50% functioning of offices, transport, night curfews, restriction on transportation from one state to the other. Therefore, the threat or the market forces are reacting in a similar manner, that the recovery of the economy may not be as it was thought, and therefore the problem is being reflected in the market forces. In that light, to help us fight against the COVID-19, the emergency approval to Sputnik V vaccine has been granted by India. Now the DGCI will take the final call on its approval. It is most likely that it will get approved, so that will be the third weapon that we can have to fight against COVID-19. The third vaccine that we will have to fight against COVID-19. The Sputnik V vaccine, we have already done an in-depth analysis about it. A link to that will be provided in the description box, so follow it there. In nutshell, the human adenovirus modified Sputnik V vaccine is one that is developed by Russia and has been approved in different countries, for example, even in our neighborhood, Pakistan. And the Sputnik V vaccine, the Indian trials for it were being done by Dr. Reddy. The shelf life and the temperature at which the vaccine preserves itself is the same to the vaccines of Bharat Biotech, that is Covaxin, and the Covishield by Serum Institute of India. As we are facing a shortage of vaccines from these two institutions, it becomes paramount that we have other alternatives, because to tide over the wave, we need more and more people who are already immune to the virus, and vaccination is the process that can be done for us. So the efficacy of the Sputnik V vaccine is 91.6% as it was claimed. It was also claimed as the earliest vaccine against COVID-19 in the world, can be maintained at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and in a water frozen format at minus 18 degrees Celsius. So that is about the Sputnik V vaccine. For more details, follow the link in which we have done an in-depth analysis of the vaccine. That will also help you revise for those who have already done it, and for those who are watching it for the first time, will save your time and you can watch it then and there. Then moving on, apart from this, on the front page, nothing of real note. On grounds of violation of Model Code of Conduct, that is that you cannot seek votes in the name of religion. Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, has been banned from campaigning for 24 hours. She has also claimed that the Election Commission has not been taking the same action against other parties, and she'll be putting in a dharna to complain against that such action should be taken against others also if it has been taken against her. Then moving on the other national news, nothing of note for us. So turning to the editorial front. On the editorial front, the main editorial, which is designing a resolute COVID-19 response, this is talking about how we could tide over COVID-19. It's a policy suggestion. One of them is that decentralization is the way ahead. That is, state government should be given a power, and at the local level, power should be given to officials to tide over COVID-19. And secondly, how vaccine rollout should be carried out, along with how testing strategy should be adopted. Now, all of that not relevant for us. Then salvaging strategy, regional safety measures and scaled up vaccinations can rein in COVID-19. So the focus of editorial pages today is COVID-19, and in that regard, that what all can the government do to prevent this tide of COVID-19, work from home, reduce restriction, more social distancing, people wearing masks, along with vaccines, and that more and more vaccines should be approved, not just the 3 that have been, but US mRNA vaccines. For those who want to buy those, they should be given the right to purchase those, and the government should reduce its overall control and have a decentralized format for it. Then the second one is about more important for us, which is save the deal. This is regarding the US-Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, for preventing Iran to carry out nuclear weapon grades for itself, which is important for regional peace. At the same time, it also talks about how US has taken certain steps to rein in the competitors of Iran in the region, that is Saudi Arabia. Then Another aspect of it is Israel. The two regional powers who contend with Iran or see Iran as a threat to its own securities. Now, we yesterday only discussed about the cyber attack on the Nantes facility of Iran and being claimed by Israel. So that US now needs to move in swiftly. Why? Because elections are due in Iran, and if a resolution to this conflict is not found, more hardline stand could be taken by the politics of Iran, which will make it more difficult for the deal to be revived. So that is the update we need to wait for. Then moving on, the second one, the second editorial, a second chance for Nepal's young democracy. So this is talking about a revision basically for the crisis that engulfed Nepal. Nepal Parliament currently under KP Sharma Oli, he was governing the United Communist Party government of Nepal. But he advised the president of Nepal to disband the parliament and declare fresh elections. This step of advice for fresh elections were declared null and void by the Supreme Court. It ordered a recalibration of the government. And secondly, another judgment that the Supreme Court gave out some weeks later was de-recognizing the United Communist Party, which has led to further disintegration. So the editorial calls that, see, fresh elections are not going to assist the overall society of Nepal because different political parties have different agendas and none of them are actually people-centric. The best alternative for Nepal at this stage is to have a collective government of these people who are already in the parliament and should focus more on concerning the COVID wave, the flagging economy of Nepal itself, and not focus on their personal vested political interest. So that is what the editorial talks about. We have already discussed different parts of the Constitution of Nepal and the constitutional crisis in depth. The editorial also talks about two specific articles of the Constitution, which is Article 104 and Article 105. It talks about when a no confidence motion can be moved in, which is that first, it can only be moved in after 2 years of the new parliament getting elected or a new government being sworn in. In India, there is no such restriction. The only restriction is that one no confidence motion can be issued in one session of the parliament. But there is no such restriction that you can move in or you cannot move in a no confidence motion in India for a certain time period after fresh elections or a new government being sworn in. The only restriction is that it can be sworn in, it can be moved in only once in one session of the parliament. However, in Nepal, it can only be done 2 years after a government has been sworn in. The other restriction is that it requires the no confidence motion shall also indicate the name of the new prime minister who wants to take charge. In India, no such restriction is there. A no confidence motion is moved in and then the president decides who he or she wants to appoint as the next prime minister or is capable to have a stable government. There is no such restriction in ours that the party that moves in the no confidence motion in the parliament has to come up with the alternative prime minister also. So those two provisions are discussed. In totality, it talks about the constitutional crisis in general and how it will not benefit Nepal if such a thing happens, that is fresh elections. Then moving up, on the op-ed page on the left hand side is far more important for us, which is how to scale up vaccine production. So India is right now facing vaccine crunch. What are the steps the government can take to ramp up vaccine production? So right now, Bharat Biotech is the company and Serum Institute. They have their limited capacity. What steps can the government do is discussed here in this op-ed. So first is Section 2 of the Epidemics Disease Act of 1887 and Section 26B of the Drugs and Cosmetic Act of 1940. What it does is, it gives the central government power to regulate sale, manufacture and distribution of drug that is essential to meet the requirement of emergency arising from a epidemic. So, for example, right now the government has taken a step of banning remdesivir for outside. that it will only be distributed in India. How much will be distributed to which state? That power is through these two acts. The other power is already for vaccines that are already existing. The first one is under Section 100 of the Patents Act. Under this, the central government has power to authorize anyone to use any patent or application for purpose of government. That is, the patent, for example, to create the Covaxin or the patent to create the Covishield vaccine, that can be distributed to other parties, and they can also then come up with their own mechanism to manufacture it. The other mechanism is to issue compulsory licenses to different manufacturing institutions to manufacture the same, or the other is to give up manufacturing facilities of other pharmaceutical companies to these two institutions to manufacture the same vaccine at different places of the country. So this is about already existing one. The other measure that is also available, so the Bharat Biotech's vaccine, that is Covaxin, has also been developed along with the ICMR and the Institute of Virology of India. Now, both these institutions are run by taxpayers' money. The other suggestion is government could actually, because this was taxpayers' money that is used to develop, to run these institutions who have developed these vaccines, patent should not be granted to only one company, and taxpayers' money should be spent to ensure maximum benefit to all taxpayers. And therefore, the government should use its power to issue license or the technology to manufacture these vaccines to other institutions also. So these are suggestions that have been provided in the op-ed. One is to regulate already existing stock, which is under the Epidemics Act and the Drug and Cosmetics Act. The other is within compulsory licenses or non-granting of patent to the ones who have already approved vaccines. So how do you increase production? Either through compulsory license to other manufacturers who will also do it for you, or you give up your facilities to these companies who can then ramp up their production, or thirdly, taxpayers' money is used to distribute the patent to other companies to also manufacture the same vaccine on their own. So this are suggestions of how India could ramp up its own vaccine production, because only with vaccinization can we tide over the fight for COVID-19. Then on the left hand side, not on the same page at C, the La Affaire with Lakshadweep shows not a betrayal by US but a different understanding of navigational freedom. That this analyzes once again the event that took place on the south of Lakshadweep Islands, US carrying out a freedom of navigation operation on the south of Lakshadweep in the exclusive economic zone of India. India claims that military maneuvers require specific consent of Indian government. US claimed that that is not the case. Now the editorial talks about how this is not actually a betrayal of India, because US wants to establish its power in other regions, specifically China, where it keeps on carrying out such operations. So this is a signal to them. The second is that this is about India and China having a different way of seeing international law than how US sees it. So it is talking about difference of opinion regarding how international law on freedom of sea and law of seas is actually perceived by the two countries. So that is analyzed for us, but once again it only becomes important as to the facts that took place. Then it talks about how events like these have already been done in the past similarly, and overall that Lakshadweep was a smart choice in general, that it was a non-conflict zone specifically between India and US, non-contentious area, far more safe to have no collateral damage between the two countries. What we need to be aware of is the law that we have already discussed on Saturday. Okay, so if you did not understand that part, put it in the comment section and I will be very happy to address it. Then moving on, the other op-ed talks about India's South Asian opportunity, that see, peace with Pakistan is not just having peace with Pakistan specifically in isolation, but overall increases the efficiency and the peace of South Asian region itself. That the economy of Southeast Asia in comparison to South Asia is far different, that because of this non-peace or conflict between India and Pakistan, the economic growth of our region has also been subdued. A comparison is drawn to the economy of ASEAN versus the economy of SAARC, and how that economy is far more beneficial for their people despite the size of SAARC being far more. In that light, the hope is on India, because India is the dominant economy of the region, dominates it up to the 75%. So India has the largest share of pie, and benefit of such policy will accrue to India far more. Then moving on the other national news. So Supreme Court has finally dismissed the petition for those who had asked for stay on dismantling of INS Virat, which was the first aircraft carrier of India. This has been now, the INS Virat will be dismantled and sold for scrap, or which howsoever it wants to be done by the company who has been granted the contract to scrap it. The party who moved in for converting it into a museum plus recreational center, Supreme Court stated that, see, you could approach this party directly, or you could have approached us earlier. But now that the process has already been done, 40% of the ship has been dismantled, the petition is futile and was thus dismissed. Then moving on the left-hand side, new election commissioner, which is that President has finally appointed Sushil Chandra, who will take over as the new Chief Election Commissioner. Election Commission has Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissions. President does the appointment of them, and he will be taking over from current CEC, that is Sunil Arora. He is an election commissioner since February 15, 2019, and had retired from government service as the chairman of Central Board of Direct Taxes, and was a 1980 batch Indian IRS officer. Then moving on, talks about the military exercise that got concluded in Bangladesh. We know Naranwe was in Bangladesh, and he attended the military exercise, that is Shantir Orgo Sena, and the valedictory ceremony of it. The exercise, which started on April 4, had other parties participating in it, that is UK, Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Singapore. The focus on the keynote address that he delivered was changing nature of global conflicts and the role of UN peacekeepers in it. And so that is the details regarding the Shantir Orgo Sena, the military exercise that got concluded in Bangladesh, where General Naravne was the chief guest for the closing ceremony. Then moving on, other national news, the Kumbh Mela is being seen as the surge in northern India cases. Large congregations of people without mask entering into water bodies. We know that swimming pools across country are shut down to prevent the risk of COVID-19, and therefore the large congregation is being seen as a hotspot for now COVID cases further. Then moving on the international news, more update from the cyber attack that was carried out at the Nantes facility. Iran blames Israel for its outage and has planned or pledged revenge. This is what affects peace or stability in the region, that you carry out one attack and then the other carries out another, then they carry out in some other way. This is following up from the ships attack that was taking place on vessels of different countries, that is Israel and Iran, doing it retaliatory attacks, and now on this regard. Benjamin Netanyahu has already pledged that he will not let Iran ever have nuclear weapons. So therefore it is, rather than assisting peace in the region, you further the conflict and see the other party as an enemy, and that is the end all goal. Then moving on the left hand side, Pakistan's human rights activist, that is I.A. Rahman, passed away. He was a winner of the Roman Magsaysay Award and a champion for peace of India Pakistan. He had also served as chairman of the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan as director from 1990 to 2008 and secretary general. He was considered a titan for human rights in Pakistan. Pakistan's human rights record specifically towards its minority is not something to be noted, and therefore for people who talk about this in Pakistan is a huge deal, which A.I. Rahman used to do, and his Roman Magsaysay Award was to recognize his efforts for peace between India and Pakistan. Further clash on the Black Lives Movement, more police violence. So it has been alleged that police on point blank range killed another African American for only excesses or bias that the police have vis-a-vis the African Americans. Recently, we saw mass shootings taking place in USA, mostly carried out by white Americans against Asian Americans. And yet, while the police arrested those individuals, no firing took place. But whenever it is an Asian American or an African American who is involved in an alleged crime, not only is there evidence not evident enough, but also the response of police is to kill those people. And it is against this action that protests for Black Lives Matter in USA have once again resurfaced. Last year also, after the death of George Floyd, who was choked to death by knee of the police officer while an arrest was being carried out, had erupted the Black Lives Matter movement in America. Then moving on the economic front, the retail inflation of Indian economy has increased further. That is now above the bracket, that is 4% is the ideal one. It is now at 5.52. And as production risk or transportation cost increase because of fuel prices and then COVID restrictions because of night curfews, further stress on price levels is expected. Then moving on the sporting front, nothing of real note. So on that note, I conclude for the day. Use the opportunity today to revise about Sputnik V vaccine and the crisis in Nepal, both the things that we have done in depth previously. So the link to that will be in the description box. On that note, thank you so much. If you like the work that we are doing, please give us a thumbs up and share the video further. And if you are new to the channel, do subscribe to it. And if you are one of those subscribers who have not been getting notification about the video updates that we do, put it in the comment section so that we know that such an event is taking place, and contact YouTube to address your concerns. On that note, thank you so much and see you all tomorrow.